Okay, guys, can we start the session? Can you just confirm me whether the voice is loud and clear? Am I audible to all of you? Okay, all right. So we will start with the next theory today. We have done with two theories in Marx. That's the historical materialism, the first and most important theory that we have done, because that covers everything, the basic concepts related to Marxian understanding, Marxian analysis, the idea about society, the idea about individual and the changes, right? The evolutionary development of society. So that's the core that we have done in the first theory. And then we have discussed about class and class struggle. Yesterday we did that. And there we discussed about the actual reasons for this struggle, right? So the causes of struggles, we have identified that in terms of three reasons, and then the process or the mechanism of class struggle. Though when we discussed about mode of production, there we have just mentioned that when the mature condition exists, they revolt. The lower class or the have-nots revolt. The reason and the mechanism, how it proceeds, and everything is what we have covered yesterday. That process is going to be very important, right? And that itself will explain why the erstwhile have-nots become new have-nots and the erstwhile haves become the new haves. For example, masters becoming the lords and lords becoming the capitalists, right? Similarly, the slaves becoming the serfs and the serfs becoming the workers. So that situation is what actually Marx considered as based on false consciousness. Even though there is a change in the system because of this revolution, but they are actually not able to change their condition, their situation. So it was based on those revolutions were based on false consciousness. And the revolution which happened in the capitalist mode of production, which was based on proper ideology, proper organization, proper leadership. And that revolution is what Marx considered as true revolution, which is based on true consciousness, as they are able to capture everything and change the conditions or the situation. So that's the two theories that we have done. And today we will be talking about alienation, one of the most important theory. Again, in fact, all the three theories of Marx is connected and are very important. Alienation, the speciality is that they will give you statements and they will ask you questions. Okay, so here we will be talking about alienation. But before that, guys, any doubts from previous session, or if any one of you can explain that, it will be perfectly fine. Who can do that, guys? Yes, Gopi, you have done last time. So you can do. Ammu, you can try. Just one session. I'll just unmute all of you. And then what you can do is you can just explain what we did yesterday. And then only, the most important points. It has to be precise and crisp to the point. Okay, you can just unmute yourself and talk.
Okay, so we were talking about class and class polarization, class struggle, the reason for class struggle and mechanism. And class means a person's status in the society or the position in production process, which is also known as a class in itself. And class 4 itself means if a class works for the development of some particular groups, then we can state it as class 4 itself. Then Marx divides class.
Actually, when it develops some consciousness, that's the condition for class 4 itself. Consciousness, which is a subjective criteria. Class in itself is based on an objective criteria. When they develop consciousness, that is a subjective criteria. So class 4 itself is the class transforms itself, which is based on some subjective criteria. Okay, then?
Okay. Then Marx categorized class into two, that is haves and have-nots. That is, haves are always superior to have-nots. Then also he also discussed about an intermediate class, that is other than haves and have-nots. An intermediate class exists in society, and later as time goes, this intermediate class will get shifted to either haves or have-nots. And this is
it's not shifted to use the word polarized into any of these two categories. Okay.
Okay.
So the intermediate classes will be polarized into either to the upper class or to the lower class through the process of bourgeoisization and proletarianization, and the entire process is known as class polarization.
Yeah. Okay, sir. But this was not true actually. Because Weber was also criticizing this because Marx was not talking anything about middle class. And Weber says that as time
No,
goes.
Marx is actually talking about middle class. That is what the intermediate class. Middle class is there, like the petty traders and all. But Marx says this middle class will be polarized into any of these two poles, that is haves and have nots, through polarization. But Weber says it never happened. In fact, middle class is getting stronger. Not only Weber, you can in fact use anything because this is a common criticism. But Weber is the best to use. And then you can also use Dahrendorf if you want. These two are mainly criticizing about these 2 points. Okay. So, but better you can use Weber.
Okay.
That's
So,
about the criticism. That's not important. Just move forward. The talk about the reasons for class struggle. Now move to class struggle.
Okay. Reasons for class struggle. Marx states 3 reasons for class struggle. That is due to the change in FOP. As FOP changes, ROP will also change. So a conflict begins. So that is one of the reasons. Then antagonist cooperation. Then the third reason is alienation. So these are the 3 reasons.
Then the mechanism of cluster.
Yeah, mechanism. So you were saying about consciousness. So due to that consciousness, due to the poor living condition of the workers or the exploitation of workers, some consciousness emerged inside the workers, and these workers started to revolt, and a revolt against the masters for settled agriculture.
No, see, actually, when we talk about the this workers, that is in the capitalist setup. That is not in this ancient mode of production. So we will be talking about 2 classes, haves and have-nots. In the beginning, when we discuss about ancient mode of production, 2 classes are the slaves and masters, right? So these 2 are in conflict. And again, serf and lords. These 2 are in conflict. Then we discuss about workers and capitalists. These 2 are in conflict. So never connect workers and masters. Okay. So if you want to say have-nots and haves, it's okay. But these 2 classes, you should never interchange. So what actually happening in the ancient mode of production? Yeah, tell me.
Among the masters, and another class emerged who were also supporting the slaves because they also wanted settled agriculture. So, a revolt was happening, but this revolt of slaves was not based on true consciousness. That was completely based on false consciousness. And the same happened in feudal mode of production as well as capital mode of production. But unlike ancient and feudal mode of production, in capital mode of production, it was based on true consciousness because the workers there have no other alternative. So it was based on true consciousness. Then this results in change in society, that is from capitalist mode of production to socialist mode of production.
Not only that result in change of society, any revolt, any situation which lead to a qualitative change. In fact, ancient to feudal is a change of society. That's a qualitative change. Feudal to capitalism, which is again a qualitative change. Capitalism to socialism is also change in society. So all these are actually social change. Okay. So here, what we were discussing is there will be slaves, that's the have-nots, and then there will be masters. So there will be an emerging class which is coming out of masters who are related to the settled agriculture. In fact, this is the group which is supporting this revolt so that eventually they will satisfy the interest of this emerging class. In the similar way, when we discuss about the feudal mode of production, there are serfs and then there are lords, right? So within lords also, there will be an emerging class. They are related to the factory setup. So that is related to factory system. I'm not writing emerging class and all. We have explained this in detail yesterday. So they will aid or support the revolt so that they will get the free labor, because you need to free the serfs from the land, because as they are already tied on the land and there are a lot of commitment if it is a feudal system. So what is actually happening? Erstwhile slaves are becoming the serfs and masters are becoming the lords. Similarly, the serfs are becoming the worker and the lords are becoming the capitalist. So this is what I've explained, that they are not able to change their situation, that they are still facing problem, exploitation. That's why these 2 are based on false consciousness. Okay. And then in capitalism, when the workers are mobilized and revolting, when the mature condition exists with all these support and better ideology and then leadership and organization, that was based on true consciousness. Okay, one more person, that is Divya, you can try. Just unmute yourself and talk. It should be very fast and quick, okay? 2-3 minutes.
Okay, sir.
Little louder.
The definition of class is the position.
No, not much. We don't want to talk about definition. Just one liner. Go forward.
Position in the production process, and a class for itself also means that the class in itself also means that it is of objective criteria. Uh, it is also the position in the production process. Then comes the class for itself. It is in objective criteria which develops some consciousness in itself. And then
Class for
Marx
itself is a subjective criteria, not
subjective.
objective criteria.
Okay, sir, sorry. Subjective criteria. And Marx defines two classes as in haves and have not. And he also mentioned the intermediate class through the process of polarization.
It will be polarized into any
polarized.
of the two poles.
Now,
reasons for class struggle?
Reason for class struggle is the antagonist cooperation, alienation, and the change in FOP leads to the change in ROP, where the new relation and the existing relation come into the conflict or the contradiction. The process and the class struggle are in ancient feudal and capitalist mode of production, where the masters first in the ancient mode of production.
Okay, now we don't want to explain all. See, just make it as like now things are very simple if you take it in this way. This is have-nots and this is haves. So always what is actually happening is within the group of haves, whether it is masters or the lords, there will be an emerging class will come. That means this group, which is an emerging class within both mode of production, right? This emerging class will be related to new FOP. So what is that new FOP in ancient mode of production which is developed? That is, what is that new FOP which is developed in the feudal mode of production? That is related to factory system. So these are the pioneers of new forces of production, whether it is in ancient mode of production or in feudal mode of production. So they want to change the system. So they aid the revolt and eventually they will get the benefit. So in these two cases, it is based on false consciousness, reasons and everything we explained. So that's it. Okay. So that's enough for this discussion. So I hope guys, everything is clear now with respect to that theory. Now let's move on to the next theory. That is.
Sir, I have one doubt. Can I just clarify fast?
You can just discuss towards the end of the session.
Okay.
So let's start with the theory of alienation. Okay, guys, see, we have discussed about historical materialism and in class struggle. The same way we will be talking about all the modes of production, starting from primitive to ancient to feudal to capitalism, then socialism and communism. So in all Marxian understanding or analysis, you will see all these modes of production is discussed one or the other way. So that you will see again in this theory of alienation. So it's all about the repetition of the same thing that you have learned, but some concepts will change in between. So let's try to understand what you mean by alienation. Now, if we go for the literal meaning of alienation, alienation means separation from, or it's a kind of a strange feeling. It could be estrangement or disenchantment, which we experience from some people or some group of people or some institution or some situation or even from society or even from family or anything. For example, we are in a class, right? So we have around 100 students. And when somebody, like today, if someone is joining, now when he is joining in the group, what will happen? He will feel like a stranger. Whatever communication that we are making in the class, he may not be aware of that, right? So that is a feeling of estrangement. He feel like he's a stranger, a new person or a student in this context of the class. Joining means he feel alienated, right? Something which we are discussing, if he is not aware of that, then he feel like a stranger. That situation is what alienation. There's a literal meaning of alienation, but this is not what actually Marx is talking about. I'm coming to that. For that, we need to discuss the concept of social being that we have done already. So what is alienation? The literal meaning is simple: separation from. You are getting separated, right? That is what you mean by alienation. Or it could be estrangement, it could be disenchantment, or it could be even isolation, it could be powerlessness. Okay, it could be all these. You feel powerless, you are not able to talk to us. I'm just muting yourself, so you're not able to talk. Then it is like a powerlessness, right? So that you will feel alienated if you are not able to communicate, right? So that is also kind of alienation. It could be anything: estrangement, you feel like a stranger; disenchantment, isolation, powerlessness. All these situations can be understood as alienation. Now, what Marx says is, you will be feeling alienation at different places. Okay, So maybe you will feel alienated at your family also. If you're not earning good, you will feel alienated. If your brother is earning good and you may not be treated well, even in your family, right? So you may feel alienation in your family. You may feel alienation in any social institution, even educational. See, guys, if you don't have money, will you be able to get good education? Will you be able to you want to have a better education? Will you be able to join if you don't have money? No, right? You wanted to attend a better coaching. Will you be able to join? No. You feel powerlessness. You feel isolated. That is also alienation. So you may be alienated in many places. Now, what are these? So these are superstructure, right? So for Marx, you will be alienated in different places, maybe religion. When it comes to some religious institution, if you're giving more donation, you will be treated very well. If you're not giving any donation, nobody is going to treat you well. Like even in some temples, if you see, there are different queues for those who are paying more to visit the god, right? So even God is also alienating you in that context. So everywhere you are facing alienation. But for Marx, guys, please unnecessarily don't spam, don't send any message. I think I check the messages by expecting that it may be something which is very important. So when we discuss something, don't go out of the context, okay? So please take care of that. Comedy and fun is okay, but okay, this is like out of context, don't do anything. I'll also lose my attention. So we are talking about alienation at different levels, but for Marx, alienation in the production process is very important. So why? Because Marx is talking about infrastructure and superstructure. All these institutions are part of superstructure. Superstructure is shaped by infrastructure. So for Marx, if you're alienated at the production process, that means at the infrastructure, you will be alienated elsewhere as well. Why? Because economic infrastructure shapes the superstructure. Okay, so that is a connection. So even if you are alienated at many places, for Marx, alienation at the workplace or alienation at the production process or alienation at the infrastructure is of prime importance. The reason is, if you are alienated at the production process, you will be alienated elsewhere as well. In simple terms, if you have money, you will not be facing alienation. Everybody will respect you. If you don't have money, either money or status, it could be you're an IAS officer, no problem. You're an IPS officer, no problem. Or you're rich, no problem. Right? Or if you have very good job, then no problem. Nobody is going to alienate you. You won't feel like a stranger. You have that power. So it all depends on what you do. It all depends on your position in the production process. You are at the top class, then you will not face alienation. So for Marx, you may face alienation in every place, but alienation at the workplace is very important. Because if you're alienated at the workplace, you will be alienated elsewhere as well. When you will face alienation at the workplace? If you're at the lower level. If you're an IAS officer, will you be facing alienation? No, right? If you are a manager or if you are at the top level of a company, will you be facing alienation? Will you feel powerlessness? No, right? So you will not face any problem outside also. Everybody will respect you. So this is what you can understand. Marx connect everything with the process of production. Marx connect everything with your position in the production process. That means your class. So if you are alienated at the production process, you will be alienated elsewhere as well. It doesn't matter, even in your family also. You don't have good job, you may face alienation at your family also. You don't have good job, you may not even able to marry, right? People will ask you, what is your job? What is your income? Will you be able to get a woman? No, right? So say everywhere you will face alienation if you don't have simply better job. Okay, so that's the main idea. Why? Because all these relations, our relations, all these institutions, all these elements of superstructure are shaped by infrastructure. So if you're good at infrastructure, that means the production process, you will be good elsewhere. If you're alienated there, you will be alienated elsewhere. Simple. Okay, so that's the initial understanding that you want to have. Now comes to actual concept of alienation. So when we discuss about actual concept of alienation, Marx explained individual as a creative humanism. We all are very creative. We have the capacity to do anything. We have the capacity to create anything and everything. So for Marx, man is above all a homo faber, man is the maker. We can create anything. Whatever we see in society, we will be able to, the table or the chair, everything we can do. So man is a creative humanism for Marx. Now, what Marx says is the definition of alienation. It's like this: you see an object in society, and if you cannot express that object as your creativity, okay, you find anything, and if you cannot express that as your creativity, then you are alienated. So what does that mean? This, see, you find an object means anything in society, if you cannot express as your creativity. Creativity doesn't mean that you created itself by yourself. It could be a sense of belongingness. It could be a sense of control. For example, if you see this product, if you cannot express this as your creativity, you will be alienated from this. Now, this expression of creativity could be in terms of either you have created it, or it should belong to you, or you should have a control over this. Okay, that control means ownership or anything. So this is what actually you mean by alienation. So alienation, he explained mostly in terms of creativity. So the creativity is reducing. That's what you actually mean by alienation according to Marx. So guys, man is a creative humanism. You find an object which you cannot express as your creativity, you are alienated. I'll give you an example for this capitalist society. In capitalist society, who's the creator? The worker, right? The worker makes everything, but the product he made, does that belong to himself? No, right? The product he made belonged to capitalist. So he don't have any sense of control. He don't have any belongingness. Now the product that you created belonged to other person. So you, though created the product, you are completely alienated from that product. It is because of the specific nature of the way you produce things. It is because of the system, because you are selling your labor and you're doing it, you are creating it, but it does not belong to you. So who's the creator? The worker is the creator. The object you created does not belong to you. Now there is a very famous statement which is given by Marx. In capitalism, the relationship between the object and the subject inverse. Now, what is the object? Object is the product. Who is the subject? Subject is the creator. When I say the relation is inversing, means in capitalism, the object become the master of subject. Originally, who should be the master? The subject, right? The creator should be the master of the object that he created. But in capitalism, that will reverse. Why? Because object is the superior here, not the worker. Worker is paid for creating that. If the worker need the product that he created, he have to buy it from the market by paying money. So he don't have any control over it. And also, he consider that his existence is because of that product. So he will, over a period of time, start feeling that the object is superior over him. And because of that object only, he is able to survive. Because he can create that object, he have a job. And because of that job and because of that object, he is able to survive. He can feed his family. So he treat the object like God. So this is what Marx talk about. He consider the object he created as superior, or use this word fetish. And you will see this question like fetishism of commodities, commodity fetishism, etc. Commodity means the object. That is what I'm talking about. Fetishism means you maintain a sense of distance. Though you created that, but still you maintain a sense of distance by thinking that your existence is because of that product and you don't have any control over that. So fetish means something you keep it aside, keep it away. You maintain a sense of distance. That is what you mean by that word fetishism. So you will see this again and again, commodity fetishism or fetishism of commodities, etc. In fact, this topic alienation is actually discussed in the chapter titled Fetishism of Commodities in the book Das Kapital. Okay, so I hope you got these words. What do you mean by fetishism? What do you mean by commodity fetishism? What do you mean by object and subject? What do you mean by the reverse relation between object and subject? Just think about it. Who is the creator? Subject, that means a worker. But what actually happened? The worker created, but it does not belong to him. It belonged to capitalist. Now, if he need the same product he created, he have to pay money and get it from the market. There is no other choice. So he again start believing that because of that product only, he, his family, and everybody is kept surviving. So that is what fetishism of commodity. So he treat it like fetish. Okay. So I hope you got this much. Now, what is alienation then? Alienation simply means you find an object, you cannot express that as your creativity, you are alienated. This expression of creativity could be in many ways, either belongingness or a sense of control or ownership. It could be anything. Okay. Now, guys, when we discuss about this alienation, what will normally happen is the alienation is actually very less in primitive communism. If I draw this diagram like this, primitive communism, and if I draw like something like degree of alienation here, okay, so it is very less in primitive communism. Why I'm saying very less? Because you face some restrictions from nature in primitive communism. Otherwise, everybody is equal. There is no concept of private property or anything. But still, I'm using alienation is very less. I'm not saying zero alienation here. Here, you have some issue. You have some restrictions from society to express your creativity. So you cannot express your complete creativity because of some of the restrictions which is imposed by nature at this level. Because there is no advancements, there is no forces of productions or anything. Then it will increase in ancient. So I'll just write A here only. And further increase in feudal, I'll just put F, okay, and reaches at its peak in capitalism. Why it reaches at its peak in capitalism is because of the way you produce things. It is because of the specific method in which the process of production is undertaken. Everything in capitalism is produced by using machine. And machines, you just control the machine, you just man the machine, which is energized by inanimate sources of energy. So your job is only to look after the machines. Everything is done by machines, right? So everything is designed, even if you want to create a table, the legs are cut, right? The top of the table and everything is decided and designed and made by the machines. Your job is only to assembling or to look after the jobs which is done by the machines. So you are not able to express your creativity, in fact, in total. And these are done by different people. Different parts are done by different people, and final assembling is done by one person. So any company, if you take even in a car manufacturing company, so somebody is building the body, and then the doors, then the engine, and then the interior, and the screw and everything, and the final assembling. All these are done by different level, right? Different workers. There are different compartments to do all these tasks. Something which could have been done by yourself, something which could be expressed as your creativity, now is done by different people because of this division of labor. So why this alienation in capitalism? Because of high degree of division of labor. You are not able to express your creativity because so many people are into one process. So it is very high in capitalism. It will reduce in socialism and finally end in communism. Now, in communism, I'm saying it is completely ending, zero. But here, primitive communism, it is less. Why? Because in primitive communism, there are restrictions from nature. Nature imposed restrictions. In communism, we are in a position where you can overcome all the restrictions which is imposed by nature in terms of advancements in technology, forces of productions and everything. Okay, so guys, now this is something which we discussed in different modes of production. The degree of alienation is increasing, right? Increasing in ancient, further in feudal, reaches at its peak in capitalism, reduce in socialism, end in communism. Why it is more in capitalism? Because of the way you produce things. It is because of the very high division of labor. Different compartments are there, which will be undertaking different processes, different parts. Okay, so the creativity will be, you cannot express your creativity. Now, if within a mode of production also, with respect to the advancement in forces of production, the chances of creativity will come down. But this is what you need to focus more. And in capitalism, he talk about 4 levels of alienation. This is very important. It should be there in your answer. First level of alienation is from the process of production. Second alienation is from the product. So you need to write like this: alienation from the process of production, alienation from the product, then alienation from fellow workers, and then alienation from the self. That means self-alienation. Now, these are self-explanatory, in fact. What do you mean by alienation from the process of production? The process of production, that means the way you produce things, it is already designed, it is already decided. So everything is done by machines, and the programming and everything, the designs and the shapes and everything is decided. What is your role as a worker? You just control the machines. You just switch on, switch off, just control it. You don't have anything to do in the workplace. So you are alienated totally from the process of production. You have no control over it in the capitalist setup, in the industrial setup. You are alienated from the product. That's the next level, right? Because you created the product. It does not belong to you. It belongs to the capitalist. So you are alienated from the product. If you want the product, you have to buy from the market. You start believing that your existence is because of this product. You start treating this product as fetishes. That's what fetishism of commodities. The relationship between the object and the subject inverse. The object becomes the master of the subject. You got it? Now, fellow workers, the work is compartmentalized because of high degree of division of labor. Different people are in different compartments, will undertake different tasks. So there are no interaction between the workers. So you are alienated or estranged from the fellow workers as well. Finally, work is just like a routine job. You go for the survival because of family, because you want to survive, you just go. You don't enjoy, right? So this situation, and just for the survival, you are doing it. You are totally alienated from yourself. You are not doing something which you really want, but this is what I'm supposed to do now. There is no other option for me to survive, for my family. So this situation is what self-alienation or alienation from oneself. This is one of the most dangerous form of alienation according to Marx. And guys, if you remember, when I talk about sociology versus economic comparisons, these are areas which you can write. The self-alienation and all these things is what something is studied in psychology. Which subject I've told? Psychology, right? Psychology. This is not economic comparison. Even in economic comparison also, you can talk about this division of labor and everything. But this is psychology. We'll discuss that later anyway. So did you got this 4 level of alienation? Now, one more thing. In capitalism, this is the most interesting part. For Marx, it is not only the worker who is alienated. So guys, this is very important. People normally won't write this. Okay. So this is something which should be there in your answer. Even the capitalist also alienated. So if you're thinking that only the worker is alienated, then you are wrong. Even the capitalist is also alienated. Why? Because it is not the capitalist actually who's exploiting the worker. It is a system which is the reason for everything. So the mindset of the capitalist is also shaped by the system. It is not his mind. It is not his thoughts. It is not his ideas. It is not he who's actually acting this. It is a system. And like if this capitalist is not doing like this, if he's not exploiting the worker, if he's keep on paying more wages and very liberal, then tomorrow he will become a proletariat. He will have to become a worker. Like that polarization will happen. He will have to see, I'll give you an example. There are 2 capitalists, let's say A and B. Okay, A is a very liberal person, so he pay more wages and very less working hours is enough for the worker. So all better working conditions, living condition, everything is provided. B is very strict, will pay very less wage and not much good working condition. Only for survival they will give. Okay, and then more time will be taken from the workers. So now if you see, they both are producing, let's say a product, let's say pen. Now, the cost of production for A will be, let's say 10 rupee. Okay. And then for B will be, let's say 6 rupee because of the way he managed. Okay. So now if B sell this in the market for 9 rupee, what profit he will get? He will get 3 rupee profit. Now, A, if he is selling it for 11 rupee, he will get 1 rupee profit. But if A sell for 11 rupee, will anyone buy from A? Forget about 11. Forget about the profit. Can he even sell at his cost price, 10 rupee? No, right? Because you are getting it from B at 9 rupee. Even the worker from A will also buy from B. You got my point? So it is not the problem of the capitalist. Capitalist cannot be like very liberal. This is how the business has to be managed. This is how the system. So in the capitalist system, the way capitalists think is also decided by the system. So in this context, guys, it has to be there in your answer. The capitalist is also alienated. The ideas of the capitalist is also alienated. Okay, because of the system. Now, Marx also talking about the concept of de-alienation. De-alienation means free from alienation. Where? In the communist society, right? Every solution is coming in which system? Communism. So in communism, you will be de-alienated and you will be free to do anything. So you can express your creativity. And he's giving a very beautiful statement. He's explaining the concept of total man. There he's talking about, like, a very beautiful statement is there. I can do one thing today, the other tomorrow. I can hunt in the morning, fish in the afternoon, rear cattle in the evening, and criticize after dinner. I can do all these things. Whatever I want, I can do. But without becoming a hunter or a fisherman or a herdsman or a critic. Okay, I have a mind without becoming all these. What does that mean? When I say hunter, it's a social being. When I say herdsman, it's a social being. When I say critic, it's a social being. So I can do all these things, but at the same time, I will not be branded as all these, right? So in this stage, in communism, the being will come into existence than social being. So you're free to do anything. You can express your creativity completely in the stage, which is communism. So we, or man, will be de-alienated, and there won't be any alienation. There won't be social being. There will be only being. That being is a creative humanism. He can express his creativity in all possible ways. So that's it. This is all about the theory of alienation. So I'll just repeat it, whatever I have discussed. Alienation, if you go for the literal meaning, it is nothing but estrangement, disenchantment, experience from a group or some people or some situation or any social institution. It could be powerlessness, or it could be isolation, or that setup, right? Now, you may be alienated in various social institutions, but for Marx, alienation at the workplace or the production process is of prime importance. The reason is, if you are alienated at the workplace, you will be alienated elsewhere as well. Because if you're alienated at the economic infrastructure, you will be alienated at the superstructure, as the superstructure is shaped by the economic infrastructure. Now, when it comes to the actual understanding of alienation, he explained that in terms of creativity, you find an object which you cannot express as your creativity, you are alienated. Okay. And then he talked about alienation at different levels. Within a mode of production, alienation will be there because of advancements in technology. Your creativity will come down. In different modes of production, degree of alienation is increasing. It is very less in primitive, increase in ancient, further in feudal, reaches at its peak in capitalism, reduce in socialism before end in communism. Now in capitalism, because of the system, because of the setup, there are 4 different levels or types of alienation. Alienation from the process of production, from the product, from fellow workers, and from self. That all you need to explain in your answer. Okay, and then I've also talked about fetishism of commodities, or the commodity fetishism, and the way the relationship between the subject and object inverse and everything. And we also discussed about how capitalist is alienated and the concept of de-alienation as well. So let's look into the PDF now. Because they'll ask you mostly this level of questions based on the statements, and these statements, by seeing this, you will be able to understand the question is actually from alienation. And all these are very beautiful statements. You see here, work in capitalism is reduced to mere labor, in which the individual doesn't develop freely his physical and mental energy, but mortifies his body and ruins his mind. Critically evaluate the assertion. The assertion, okay? I hope you don't mind the spelling mistakes. Now, it is not the consciousness of man that determine their existence, but on the contrary, it is their social existence that determine their consciousness. That is also related to alienation. History of mankind has double aspect. It was the history of increasing control of man over nature. At the same time, it was the history of increasing alienation of man. All these is what I have explained before. But I'll see all these I have added in your answer in the write-ups in appropriate situations. Okay. Now, what does this mean? It was history of increasing control of man over nature. What is actually happening? The forces of productions are changing and improving. At the same time, what is actually happening? Alienation increasing. When the forces of production improving, your creativity is coming down. Okay. Next, work is external to the worker. It is not part of his nature. Consequently, he doesn't fulfill himself in his work, but demise himself. Okay, even this one, if you see, it is not the consciousness of man that determines his existence, but the contrary. It is the existence that determines your consciousness. You can either use the concept of alienation, or if you can also write by using this. We discussed about infrastructure, shapes, superstructure, right? Which in turn helps in the functioning. Now tell me where the consciousness of individual come. Consciousness of individual will come here. So now it is very clear, right? It is not the consciousness of man that determine your existence. On the contrary, it is your existence that's what we can see directly from here, right? Your existence means infrastructure. Okay, so it is the infrastructure, or it is a production process. Your existence means your position in the production process that will shape your superstructure. That means when I say the ideas or the consciousness all will fall in the superstructure, which in turn means what? Exactly the same statement. It is the existence. That means your position in the production process. It is your class. Okay, will determine your consciousness. Okay. So either by using this, guys, this one you can use in explaining all Marxian questions actually. This is actually the Marxian perspective. Or even you can use the theory of alienation here. Now look at this. In bourgeois society, the capital is independent and has individuality, while the living person is dependent and has no individuality. So these are what we did. We discussed about meaning and alienation, de-alienation, all these. So these are what we are supposed to cover now quickly. Everything is there. How this lead to social change within mode of production, different mode of production, and then this graph that I've discussed. And then these are the 4 different types of alienation and the explanation, and then the concept of de-alienation. And in between, I've incorporated all what you need to write as the statements. Okay. So let's start. Marx uses the concept of alienation in order to deconstruct the exploitative production process. It is understood by Marx as a fundamental social process which constrains the individual within a particular mode of production. Along with class struggle, the concept of alienation completes the dynamic explanation of society. Now, what is the literal meaning? It means separation from. Marx defines alienation as a situation in which a feeling of estrangement or disenchantment is experienced from a group, situation, or society, and even from individual himself. That individual himself is what I've just explained that as the self-alienation. It also referred to a situation of powerlessness, isolation, and meaninglessness experienced by people when they are confronted with social institution, okay, which they cannot control and consider